Hello, I'm Adam and welcome back to The Salty Fish, where we invite you to join us on the journey of learning to live more sustainably in Three God's provision. When you're first starting out to grow your own food at home, you're going to have three questions that you're going to need to answer. Number one, what are you going to grow? Number two, where are you going to grow it? And number three, what are you going to grow it in? The first two questions you can answer yourself. What are you going to grow? You're going to grow what you enjoy eating. Where you're going to grow it is going to depend on the amount of space that you have. We have limited space here on less than 600 square meters of land, but that suits us perfectly fine. And what you're going to grow it in. Now, I'm going to help you to answer that question of what you're going to grow it in today as we talk about compost. Now, compost, when you think of compost, there's two different ways that people compost. You can see there's large compost heaps where people throw all of their food scraps and all of their grass clippings and bits and pieces into there. You get these large mounds that deteriorate and decompose over time, and they get their compost that way. That's okay if you have a lot of space, but if you're gardening in a limited space, another way that you can do it is with one of these, a compost tumbler. And these you can get dirt cheap. This one we found on Facebook. A little bit broken, but it works perfectly fine for what we need. You can go out and buy bags of compost in the store. And that's a really good way to do it if you have limited time or if you really want to get into your gardening. The problem there is that the one that you buy from the store has been heat treated to kill off the microorganisms that are in the compost. You still have many nutrients in there, but you're lacking those microorganisms that are so important to your garden health. When you make it yourself, you have both the nutrients and the microorganisms all in the one, and I think it's a really cheap way to be able to produce it yourself. Now, what can you put into your compost is a really good question. We're going to talk about green compost and we're going to talk about brown compost. Now, green compost is your grass clippings, all organic matter. Anything that has been grown. It can be vegetable clippings, it can be grass clippings, you can even throw your weeds in there, your rice, your pasta, all of your kitchen scraps. And apart from lemon, onion and meat, all of the other kitchen scraps can be thrown into your compost. Now for your brown matter, you're looking at things like your dead leaves that you rake up, you're looking at your old newspapers, your old papers, you're even looking at bits of cardboard, which we have in our compost as well. So if you come a little bit closer, I'll show you what we're going to be putting into our compost today, just to give you a bit of an example of what you can throw in there. What we have here is some overcooked rice, some peas in there, some bread that's gone a bit stale, we have some kale stems, we've even got some burnt toast scrapings in there as well. Now just for the record, all of the cooking videos are going to be coming from Annette, not me, so that's okay. So we're going to be throwing that into our compost today, but before we do that, I want you to come back in again and I'll show you what we have growing in our compost at the moment. If you look deep in there, you can see all sorts of things. All of this here, that is all grass clippings that we threw in there a little while ago. It was breaking down and decomposing quite well. We have bok choy that we didn't get to in time. We have bits of old cardboard on the side there as well that you can throw in there as your brown compost as well. Normally when you open it up, you can have a few flies coming out at you. That's perfectly fine as well. And you might even notice that in here you have a bit of mold growing too. A bit of white mold that you can get forming on the surface there. That's perfectly fine. It is quite a damp environment in there and you're going to notice a bit of mold. Don't stress about that. That does happen. Just let it grow in there. Everything will be okay. So I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to throw this into the compost. All the other bits and pieces that are in there. Now whenever you add to your tumbling compost, always make sure you put the lid back on, and we're going to give it a tumble a few times. Now you need to tumble your compost, and what that does a number of things. It aerates the compost for you and breaks up those clumps. Now when you aerate your compost, you're allowing oxygen through your compost, and that's really important for those microorganisms that are growing in there. Those microorganisms themselves are really, really important because most of the decomposition happens because of the microorganisms you have growing in your compost. Now in a tumbler compost like this, This should be ready to go in about 6 to 8 weeks. It happens pretty quick. In those big compost heaps, you're looking at a much longer period of time. These actually rely on heat to help the organisms, the microorganisms, break down the compost for you. Just keep in mind, the more you add to it over time, the longer it's going to take to break down, because you're continually adding fresh ingredients to your compost tumbler, and that's going to take more time to break down. And also, you may look at this and think to yourself that this creates a lot of compost. And you're right, it does. But just keep in mind as well that when you're starting to grow your own food at home, you're going to need a lot of growing medium to be able to plant those plants in. And this is definitely a cheap and effective way of getting nutrient-rich soil to grow the homegrown produce in, and it happens in no time. Now we have one compost tumbler here, and that's a good start. But ideally you'd want 3. You want one that you're adding the fresh ingredients to. You want another one that is full and it's maturing, and then you have another one that you're taking back from. That way you're working on having a continual supply of compost rather than waiting for your one tumbler to be ready for you to use. God bless you. Thank you so much for taking the time to check out this video. If you like this video, give it a big thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe, and thank you again for checking out this video. We look forward to seeing you again soon.